Welcome back. So let's start another video with the question, how do consumer acknowledgement work in RabbitMQ and why are they important? Consumer acknowledgement in RabbitMQ play a pivotal role in ensuring message durability and integrity, right? They are mechanisms through which a consumer notifies the RabbitMQ broker about the status of message processing. So if you count, it is called ACK mode, ACK mode. When consumers subscribe to a queue, it specifies its acknowledgement mode. This mode determines how the consumer will acknowledge received messages. Now let's talk, there are two ways, right? Automatic acknowledgement and manual acknowledgement. The first is automatic acknowledgement, where auto underscore ACK is equal to true. As soon as the message is delivered to the consumer, its acknowledgement automatically by the broker send it to the sender. This is the fastest mode, but there is a risk, right? This is the fastest mode, that's correct. But there is a risk. What kind of risk I am talking about? It is possible that your consumer may fail to process the message, but your acknowledgement is already delivered and they are knowing that this is processed. So that's why that kind of possible loss is possible if you say auto underscore ACK is equal to true. But there is another mode which is manual acknowledgement, and that means auto underscore ACK is equal to false. The consumer is, in this case, your consumer sends an acknowledgement back to the broker after it has successfully processed the message. So this provides better control but requires additional logic in the consumer application side. Okay. Discuss another few more acknowledgement type. One is called NAK or reject. If the consumer encounters an issue processing the message, it can send a NAK, negative acknowledgement, or reject the message. The consumer can specify if the message should be requested or discarded, requeued or discarded, sorry. Yeah. So if it is like, meaning requeued means or after failing, what you exactly want as an action next time. Do you want requeued or do you want discard this message? Okay, this is the meaning. Now, another type, if a consumer crashes or disconnects without acknowledgement a message, then RabbitMQ will consider the message unacknowledged after a timeout. The broker will then request the message, making it available for other consumers. Okay. Next is multiple acknowledgement. So RabbitMQ also supports acknowledging multiple messages at once, meaning if a consumer receives several messages, it can send a single acknowledgement for the last message, indicates that all processed messages were also processed. Yeah, so that is little, I think you understood. Like if there is a multiple acknowledgement, they will consider the final acknowledgement, they will send the final acknowledgement only, but at that time they think that all the acknowledgement already processed. Okay. Yes, so it's around 1 p.m. and I'm still wake up for video. So yeah. Okay, so the question is, RabbitMQ has built-in alarms for memory and disk usage. What are the implications of these alarms being triggered and how would you handle such situation in a production environment? So let's try to understand one by one. The first thing is RabbitMQ has two primary built-in alarms, that's correct, the memory alarm and the disk alarm. These alarms exist to ensure the health and stability of the RabbitMQ server. Memory alarm and disk alarm, okay? Implication of the alarms being triggered. The first let's try to understand the memory alarm. When the RabbitMQ server uses more memory than the configuration threshold, VM underscore memory underscore high underscore watermark, that is the threshold value, the memory alarm is triggered. Implication here is RabbitMQ will block producers from sending new messages to the queues. Consumers can still dequeue messages, allowing the memory to potentially free up. This blocking ensures that RabbitMQ does not exhaust all available memory and crash or degrade severely in. All right, so memory alarm you already understood, finished right now. Let's try to understand the disk alarm. When the free disk space drops below the configured threshold, and that threshold is defined in variable disk underscore free underscore limit, then the disk alarm is activated. What is the implication here? The implication is similar to the memory alarm, RabbitMQ will block producers from sending new messages to prevent the disk from running out of space. Again, consumers are not blocked and can continue processing messages. Now, if you remember, the question has another part, which is that how do you handle such situation in production environment? So in production environment, you have to execute some immediate actions. The one is monitor and alert. Ensure that monitoring systems are set up to notify the operation team immediately when an alarm is triggered. Now, memory and disk space, right? So what you do, clearly, you should, first action point is free up resources, right? Temporarily stop or reduce the rate of message publishing. Concurrently, if possible, increase the rate of message consumption to free up memory or disk space. Okay. The disk alarm was triggered due to the log file or non-RabbitMQ related files. Consider moving or deleting them to free up the space. Until now, you understood the immediate action. Now, let's talk about the midterm action. So, optimize resource uses. Analyze if specific queues or exchanges are consuming disproportionate resource, and if so, then let's try to find why. Maybe some queues are growing faster than anticipated, or dead letter queue are filling up very fast. Try to also take action like upgrades the hardware. Consider upgrading the server's RAM or increasing the disk space if the current resources frequently hover near their limits. Review message persistence. Not all messages need to be persistent. If a vast number of messages are set to be persistent, it might be worth reevaluating this decision based on the message's criticality. Until now, you understood the immediate action. Now, let's talk about the midterm action. So, optimize resource uses. Analyze if specific queues or exchanges are consuming disproportionate resource, and if so, then let's try to find why. Maybe some queues are growing faster than anticipated, or dead letter queue. Now, by now you already understand immediate action and midterm. So let's go to the long-term action decision. So long-term action is the one is cluster and scale. Implement a RabbitMQ cluster to distribute the load across multiple nodes. This not only provides scalability but also high availability, right? Implement quotes. Set limits on the number of unacknowledged messages a consumer can have. This can help in preventing memory spikes. Do the regular maintenance. Schedule the regular maintenance window to perform tasks like cleaning up unused queues or exchanges should be cleaned up, right? Contracting the database if necessary, or archiving old log files. Training and documentation. Ensure that the development teams are aware of best practices when publishing and consuming messages to avoid undue strain on the RabbitMQ server. Okay. So, all right. So let's pick another question now. What will you do if your RabbitMQ cluster starts showing sign of distress due to a high number of unacknowledged messages? How can you implement backpressure to prevent message overload? So the answer of this question is, when a RabbitMQ cluster starts showing distress due to a high number of unacknowledged messages, it is a sign that the message consumes might not be processing message appropriately, quickly enough, leading to a backlog. Backpressure, implementing backpressure and other strategies can help manage the situation. Okay. And if I divide the action in different form, then immediate action is start monitoring, right? Ensure that you have a monitoring in place to catch issue like rising unacknowledged message counts, increased memory uses, and high CPU utilization. This will allow you to address problems before they become critical. Investigate the consumers. Determine if there is an issue with the message consumers. Perhaps they are experiencing errors, have crashed, or are processing message slower than usual. Then another solution may be increase the consumer count. Temporarily scale up the number of consumers if possible. This can help in processing the backlog faster. And pause producer. If the situation is critical, consider pausing or slowing down the message producers to prevent adding more load to the already distressed RabbitMQ cluster. Okay. Backpressure, implementing backpressure and other strategies can help manage the situation. So as a developer, let's try to understand implementing backpressure. So the first consideration is prefetch count. Set a prefetch count on your consumers. This sets the maximum number of unacknowledged messages a consumer can receive. Once the limit is reached, RabbitMQ won't send more messages to the consumer until it acknowledges the ones it has. This way, you prevent overloading a slow consumer. The second point is producer awareness. Make your message producers aware of the state of the RabbitMQ cluster. If the cluster is under distress, the producer can either slow down their message publishing rate or offload message to a different system or storage for later processing. And third is how to cater the quality of service. Using RabbitMQ's QoS setting, you can limit the number of unacknowledged messages at the channel or connection level. So, these kind of tweaking you can do with your implementation. Okay. Here is a dead letter exchange concept. If you remember, this is a standard technique to avoid infinitely trying to process some message. You should avoid by using this. How do you implement? So implement dead letter exchanges to handle messages that cannot be processed at all. Messages that have been negatively acknowledged or have reached their maximum redelivery attempts, retry attempts, can be sent to a DLX. This allows you to inspect problematic messages and decide how to handle them without affecting the main processing flow. If you remember, I always saying, as earlier also said, that for debugging it is very important. Okay. Another point is queue length limit. Set a maximum length on your queues. Once a queue reaches its limit, you can configure RabbitMQ to either drop or dead letter the oldest message. This prevents the queue from growing indefinitely, but you might lose some messages. Okay. Now, let's discuss now the feedback loop to producer. Implement a feedback loop where consumers can communicate back to producer. If consumers are getting overloaded, they can signal the producer about this kind of situation. I'll try to cover now additional consideration here. One is like regular audits. That is very standard, right? Periodically review the unacknowledged messages and the reason they are not being acknowledged. This can provide insights into recurring issues and areas of optimization. Training and best practice ensure that developers and operators are aware of the importance of acknowledging messages, handling errors correctly, and not leaving messages unacknowledged indefinitely. Okay. Cluster health. Another point is cluster health. Regularly monitoring the overall health of your RabbitMQ cluster, not just in terms of unacknowledged messages only, but also other metrics like memory usage, disk IO, network throughput, and node health, right? In summary, we can conclude when dealing with a high number of unacknowledged messages in RabbitMQ, a combination of monitoring, scaling, and backpressure strategies can help in maintaining the health and performance of the cluster. I think I would able to answer your all the doubt for that question, and if the way I explained in this video you understood and you will explain your interviewer, he can definitely understand that you have enough experience in RabbitMQ, which is practical, theoretical, and logical. That is more than enough to understand or check the basic to advanced level of understanding about the RabbitMQ. So now I'm going to pick some another topic, maybe Apache Kafka, where we can again start question and answering with system design interview. I mean, focus should be on system design interview in the next video. तब तक के लिए खुश रहें, मेहनत करें, पढ़ते रहें, आगे बढ़ते रहें. धन्यवाद. आप सभी को धन्यवाद.